صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى روحك وبدنك الطاهرة. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي كفيل الهواشم قمر بني هاشم أبا الفضل العباس عليه السلام. السلام عليكم جميعا يا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على. A second for the love of Lady al-Baneen. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. A third with your loudest of voices for the love of Sayyidatuna Zainab al-Kubra. اللهم صل على محمد. As-Sahihain, Bukhari and Muslim are viewed as the most dogmatic and accepted works in the majority of the Muslim world today, and are tantamount to the authenticity of the Holy Quran as seen by 3/4 of the Muslim world in today's day and age. And in the age of 2021, we have roughly 1.8 to about 2 billion Muslims, so 3/4 of that is a lot of Muslims. And seen as the most authentic, aside from the Holy Quran text, viewed as dogmatic by the majority of the Muslim community around the world today, wherever you may look, there are Muslims that will refer to the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet by these two works, and are considered Sahih from one fold to the other, from one cover to the other. These are the only two works in human history that have been written years after, with the exception of the Holy Bible to the Christian denomination, that are seen as dogmatic, authentic, accepted by God Almighty. To the point where one of the esteemed scholars of the 4th Islamic Hijri century, 478 Hijri roughly, by the name of Imam al-Juwayni, the Imam of the Haramain at that time, announced very clearly that if someone swore that they should be considered divorced if the works of Muslim and Bukhari are inauthentic, then I would not divorce them from that pledge. This is a fiqhi ruling that is found in the other school of thought, not in our schools. When someone makes a pledge, Lillahi alayhi, or I swear by Allah that if the following case is wrong, then I am to be divorced. This is a valid vow that is made and established by the other school of thought. If made sincerely and genuinely, and the case turns out to be incorrect, the person has to be divorced. In the school of Ahlulbayt, we do not have this. But Al-Imam al-Juwayni, the Imam of the Haramain of the 4th century, roughly the 478 AH Hijri calendar, made this announcement that I would not make them divorced because everything in the Sahihain is considered authentic. Imagine someone today makes the following pledge: the Al-Kafi al-Sharif or Bihar al-Anwar of Al-Allamatul Majlisi radwanullah ta'ala alayh, I pledge that if there's a single hadith that is incorrect or false, then right now I am to be divorced. This person immediately has to become divorced. But because this is not a bounding fiqhi obligation in the madhab of Ahlulbayt, this does not amount to anything. But it does in the other school of thought. What was being emphasized was the following: the complete competence and confidence in that these two works, these two canonized texts, are absolutely authentic. You can even swear your marriage by it. And these works today, brothers and sisters, affect us as Shia Muslims more than we imagine. Because there are those who will propose that because we are Shia followers of the Ahlul Bayt, by default, we disagree with everything found in these two material. We do not despise any work of history. We don't. Everything is assessed academically, analyzed, rationalized, examined, looked into. We don't hate because we just hate whatever comes from the other side. That's a very naive way of thinking in this world today. It's a very petty way of thinking. Just because the produce came from people who you do not necessarily consider 100% on the same aqeedah level as me, then everything must be wrong from them. That's not necessarily the case. The hadith of Kisa can be found in some of these works, can they not? Hadiths such as praising Amir al-Mu'mineen can be found in these works. The hadith individually is examined, but we do not blanket statement that everything is authentic. We don't do that for our works, like Al-Kafi al-Sharif, or Al-Istibsar of Al-Saduq, or Man La, of Tusi rather, or Man La Yahdurhu al-Faqih of Al-Saduq, or Tahdhib al-Ahkam of Tusi. We do not say anything is Sahih. For the following reasons, inshallah, we will examine. But as Shia, it is important to us to at least know where the other side is coming from. And is it reasonable and is it accepted, the following logic, that we can claim a work of hadith can be considered authentic from the fold to the end? And why do we not have a Sahih work? Wouldn't it be nice to say that we have a work, a manuscript, everything inside it is Sahih? Rather, that is impossible. And we will examine, inshallah ta'ala, by looking into the following issues we from the Shia worldview have with this notion of having a Sahih text. By examining these two works, As-Sahihain, one by Muhammad bin Ismail al-Bukhari, and two, Sahih Muslim by Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj al-Naysapuri. After a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. Being a contemporary of Imams al-Hadi and Askari alayhum as-salam, Muhammad bin Ismail al-Bukhari was born in the 194th year after Hijrah. So this man came years, over 100, near to 200 years after the Hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when he was born into a world where the madrasas, the schools of teaching hadith were there. And so he decided to pursue becoming a muhaddith. He is not considered a faqih, where he would give fatwas and fatawa, although he gave fatawa. But in Islamic history, classical Islamic scholarship, we find two types of ulama, brothers and sisters. Muhaddithun, and we have fuqaha. Fuqaha of the like such as all the Imams of Ahlul Bayt are fuqaha, and all the Imams of Ahlul Bayt are muhaddithun. But from the other school of thought, the like such as Abu Hanifa, Ahmad bin Hanbal, Imam al-Shafi'i, Malik bin Anas, and these likes, Ad-Dar al-Qutni, and so forth, or Al-Ash'ari, and all of these groups, these are fuqaha. They issued fatwas. They would tell people how to address certain issues in their lives, how to address certain individuals. A muhaddith simply narrates hadith, that's it. So they are not necessarily scholars. So for example, when we look at Asim, and we look at the narrators of the Holy Quran, these are not scholars, these are muhaddithun. Hafs and Asim, and Sulami, and Ali ibn Abi Talib, for example. These people that narrate the Quranic qira'ah. Inshallah ta'ala, we will examine that in the upcoming lecture we have about these lexical versions of the Holy Quran. Are there multiple qara'een out there, or is there one Quran al-Kareem? And so why do people say there are 7 ahruf of the Holy Quran? That discussion will come inshallah ta'ala in the upcoming nights. But you notice the narrators are not fuqaha, even though they're narrating something very important, the qira'ah of the Quran. Rather, they are called muhaddithun. Bukhari tried to become, or is seen and considered by some, a faqih. But he is known to be a muhaddith. His fatwa that he gave are rather interesting. He did not become a celebrity while being a faqih. He became a celebrity while being a muhaddith. What do we mean by this? Examine one fatwa. Bukhari made the following fatwa, that, and this is found in his work of fatawa, that if two non-related individuals, meaning there's no connection to them by any relation, drank from the same milk of the same cow, they become mahram to one another. We have this ruling of al-rida'a, when an infant is suckled by another woman, and this woman provides milk enough such that this child can be considered like her son shar'an, al-ibn bil-rida'a, or bil-rida'a. This is found, this is accepted, this is established. Al-Bukhari made the following fatwa, that this is also accepted when it comes to drinking the same milk from the same animal, specifically a cow. Of course, for these reasons and others, he did not become a celebrity while being a faqih, because this is not something you can substantiate. The Quran does not speak of, nor does the ahadith in any way whatsoever justify such logic. So he became a celebrity by becoming a muhaddith. What does this mean? He was born in Bukhara, what was back then the Persian Empire, what is now considered Uzbekistan, and he's currently buried there. And he began this journey finding the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He went to Sham, he went to Basra, he went to Egypt, he went to Medina, Mecca, he went to Kufa, and eventually he returned back to Bukhara, Uzbekistan, and he narrates and he reports, he collected over 600,000 ahadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He examined each and every single hadith, and before he added it to his compendium, his Sahih, which was back then called Al-Jami' Al-Kabir. Later on, his disciples called it Sahih Al-Bukhari. And until today, this is what is famously known as. He collected from the 600,000 ahadith from Rasulullah, he collected roughly about 5,000 of them. To him, they were considered Sahih. 5,000 of them, but there are repetitive ahadith in there. So he finds the same hadith, but with different chains leading back to it. If you remove the repetitive ahadith, the repetitions, you have roughly 2,450 hadith that are sahih, individual, distinct, in Sahih al-Bukhari today. From these traditions, he explained his methodology, how he added and included a hadith. He said, I examined 600,000 during my journey, and I would not add a hadith to my Sahih except that I did the following. I prayed 2 rak'at namaz salah. I want Allah to bless this. Let me bless this act by before praying 2 rak'at salah. Number 2, I used to take istikhara. So I consult the Holy Quran al-Kareem. Ya Allah, is this a good thing that I am doing? Then after a salah, after al-khira, consulting the Quran, I then decided to study the hadith. I looked at its chain, I looked at the metin, the content, and then if I determined this was authentic, I would add it. I ask, how long would that take a person to do? How long? Al-Bukhari mentions it took him a span of 16 years to do so. And later on in his life, he developed a blindness to him. But that we'll put to the side. How long should this take a person to examine one hadith, look at its chain? But when you look at a chain, you look at the biographers. Between Bukhari and Rasulullah are roughly 9 narrators. I heard from my teacher, who is a muhaddith, who heard from his teacher, going back eventually to either Anas bin Malik, Abu Hurairah, Aisha, and the likes, who heard from Rasulullah. He has roughly 9 people. How long would it take him to examine each individual, determine if they were reliable, in addition, pray 2 rak'at salah and istikhara, and then add it. So he'd have to do wudu for each one and so forth. It would take you at the very least 30 minutes. Okay, you have 600,000 ahadith you're going to look through. 30 minutes. 30 times what? 600,000. That's 18 million minutes. 18 million minutes. That's roughly 32 years. How did you say you accomplished it in 16 years? And he died in the years when he was 60 years old. He was 60 years old when he accomplished. By the way, that's if you're doing nothing but examining a hadith. When does the man need to sleep? And he traveled, mashallah, of many distances. So the numbers tend to not add up. But nonetheless, sallamna, we accepted, this is what you proposed. Khalas, we will look at it. Our examination begins in the exact book, because if it is tantamount to the Holy Quran al-Kareem, then this is a major statement. Because if everything is sahih inside, then you must have worked your socks off. And you must have made sure. So what do we do when we examine the following work? We do not come from a place of mocking. This is considered a Sunni work, therefore I have to immediately hate things. La, that's not fair. As a Shi'i, munsif, like-minded individual, you examine everything accordingly and logically. With respect to Bukhari, our issue is the following. How did we come and accept from the 3/4 of the Muslim world that this is all sahih? Who made that claim that it was all sahih? The number one response is that it was through the ijma' of the ummah, meaning the consensus of the Muslim world, the ummah, and al-Imam al-Nawawi, who is a very famous scholar and alim of the classical time of Sunni scholarship. He has the famous Al-Arba'un Hadith work, and al-Imam al-Nawawi made the following statement that Bukhari is sahih based on al-ijma' al-ummah, ijma' of the entire ummah, the entire Muslim ummah. What does it mean when you find the term al-ummah al-islamiyya? Does it just mean every individual? In the context of scholarship, it means the ulama all together unanimously agreed that this is sahih. But that's not true, because even the Sunni scholarship did not all agree this was all sahih. For example, Al-Bayhaqi, a classical Sunni scholar, disagreed with this. He says al-Bukhari is not all sahih under my terms. Can you have ijma' of the ummah if there are scholars that are missing? You cannot have ijma' if there's a scholar not present. For example, Ad-Dar al-Qutni. Dar al-Qutni was a scholar from Baghdad. He wrote a book called Al-Tatabbu'at, Al-Ilzamat wa-Tatabbu'at. Al-Ilzamat wa-Tatabbu' rather. In this book, he addressed 200 ahadith he found that are incorrect and false based off of the chain in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. 90 from Bukhari, 110 from Sahih Muslim. He's a Sunni scholar, an esteemed scholar, who refuted this claim that you cannot call this Sahih, because I personally examined 200 traditions, in my humble opinion, that are false. Al-Imam al-Suyuti, another, and this is a famous philosophical scholar in Sunni scholarship, famous alim, Al-Imam al-Suyuti said, no, not in my opinion, this is not all Sahih. And many more classical scholars of that time denied that this was authentic. What about contemporary ulama? Yes, you had contemporary Sunni ulama. For example, Muhammad Nasr al-Albani, really famous, prominent, they refer to him as al-Allam al-Albani, from Albania, one of the largest scholars of Sunni scholarship in the 20th century today, who passed away. He, in his humble opinion, says there are traditions in Bukhari that are not sahih. That means, could you call the entire thing sahih? No. He might refute 3 or 4, but at the end of the day, if you refuted 1 or 100, you cannot call the entire thing sahih all of a sudden. And you also have the Moroccan scholar Ahmed ibn Siddiq al-Ghamari, who also made the following claim, contemporary alim as well, that no, not all of it is sahih. Under my research, I've seen and I've studied the chains, the context, and I've seen all of these, and I found traditions that are wrong. Therefore, how could you say the entire ummah agreed upon it? And if we consider the ummah means Muslims. Okay, the Shia, are they not from the ummah? Yes, they are. None of the Shia called it sahih. Unless you take the Shia out of the Ummah al-Islamiyya and say they're not Muslims, that's another bahath, that's another research you can do. The Zaydiyya from the Shia denomination, they don't believe all of Sahih Bukhari and Muslim are accepted. But unless you take the Zaydiyya out of the Ummah, what about the Ibadiyya? What about the Mu'tazila? These individuals all agree that no, everything is subject to a diraya, a dirasa, an examination, a look, a thorough examination, dissecting, looking, and seeing the hadith. This is sahih to you probably, but not to me, because I have different conditions. Which leads us to the following issue. Our issue with calling something sahih is that sometimes you might find what is referred to as al-akhbar al-ahad, brothers and sisters. What does that mean? Al-khabar al-wahid, or hujjiyat al-khabar al-wahid, is a study in the science of hadith today. Many people undergo it and study it. What does it mean? It means you have a singular hadith reported. Mean one person reported one thing from Rasulullah, no one else reported it. And you have one individual saying this to his student, who told it to his student, eventually leading, for example, to Bukhari himself, who included it in his book. He doesn't have the main person narrating this alongside multiple other individuals. Then you would have ijma' or consensus. You had only one individual. So this is khabar al-wahid, one guy. How do you know for sure that when this guy narrated something, perhaps he narrated it truthfully, he genuinely heard Rasulullah say the following sentence, for example. But how do you know the 9 people leading back to you all heard it correctly? It's like the game of telephone. Right now, if we were to sit and you have 9 people, 9, you say the following sentence, I want a glass of water. And you tell that person to whisper it to the next individual. By the time it reaches the last guy, it ends up being like, I want some tea. How do you know that they didn't mishear something? Because we're not saying that they're not thuqat, they're not reliable. La, they could be reliable, thuqat, mu'minun, but they're human. They can mishear sometimes. If I tell you to narrate to me what your mom said to you in the sermon she gave a lecture that's an hour long, a khutbah, and she gave you, like, let's say she was trying to discipline you. You were supposed to go and narrate that to your brother, who didn't hear that big statement and speech your mother gave to you. Are you going to narrate everything 100%? No, it's way too difficult. First of all, you have to have a wonderful, mashallah, memory to do that. Second of all, you could have forgotten things. Or you could use filler words. She said something, you use something similar to it, but she didn't exactly say that word. She said the sky was blue, you said that the night sky was blue. Similar discussion, but something was changed a little bit. This is all very possible. These are natural human errors. Tayyib, how could you have a work that has many traditions that are considered khabar wahid, al-akhbar al-ahad, you have that and consider it sahih? Logically, there's going to be that risk by chance, by a little percent, that someone misheard something, especially if you have 9 people between you and Rasulullah. For that risk, we're not even saying that these narrators could be liars, malicious, they would lie, they make up. La, they could be very reliable. But what if they simply misheard? That's very possible. Because of that possibility, in order to respect your intellect, you can't call this all sahih. You have to accept the reality that someone probably misheard something. So how could you call it sahih? Okay, what if someone replies back to you as a follower of the Ahlulbayt and says, wait a minute, you also got akhbar ahad. You also have in there, slow down, Ravali. You also have in al-Kafi, in these works. You got khabar wahid as well. Yeah, we do, but that's why we don't call it sahih. Because we understand that there's a chance someone misheard it. Okay, then why do you accept it? Just because we have one person narrating something from Rasulullah doesn't mean that there's always a chance that they're going to be wrong. That's the best we have. Sometimes this is all you could work with. But what do we do to consider that if a khabar al-wahid, and there's a whole study in right now the seminaries between Najaf and Qum, for centuries they've been studying the science, hujjiyat al-khabar al-wahid, the accepting of this singular report. You first present it to the Holy Quran. This is the criteria. So there's a chance this person might have misheard something. He's not doing it because he's deliberately malicious. So what do? You present it to the Holy Quran. تُعْرَض الْحَدِيث لِلْقُرْآنِ الْكَرِيمِ. You give it to the Quran. What does the Quran do to the hadith? If the content of the hadith contradicts the Quran al-Kareem, what do you prioritize, Quran or hadith? Quran. Hadith, go away, I don't care. Even if the narrator was the most reliable person. No, it doesn't matter to me. In this case, you said something, Quran said something else. For example, you might find a hadith that might say that Rasulullah allowed for doing wudu, and this is a hadith that is found in the Sahihain works of our brothers and sisters. Wudu over the sock or the shoe. You could do wudu over that. The Quran didn't say that. The Quran said, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَامْسَحُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. Wipe the feet to where the heel meets the foot. feet, رجل, وأرجلكم. Didn't say, it said رجل, it says foot. Didn't say that the foot was wearing something or it was covered by something. If the head in the Quran was described as exposed, رؤوسكم وأرجلكم, and the arms were described as exposed, إلى المرافق, then why would you then allow for the feet to be covered and have water over it? It says, because I found a hadith that says that. But if the hadith contradicts the Quran, which one are you going to prioritize? That's why 3/4 of the Muslim world today are allowed to do wudu wearing socks and shoes. Why? Because the hadith is found in the Sahih work. But Habibi, the Sahih work contradicts the Quran here. It's like, but the hadith is always Sahih. But if it contradicts the Quran, which one do we prioritize? The Quran or the words of fallible men? The Holy Quran al-Kareem, you present the khabar al-wahid to it first. If the Quran al-Kareem accepts it, this is in sync with the vision of the Holy Quran, where else do you take this hadith, this rogue singular hadith, narrated by someone that is reliable, but he's the only or she is the only individual that narrated it? You then present it to the other sahih ahadith you have. Are they similar? Is this logical? You also examine the metin, the content of the hadith. Is the behavior, is what is being said even reasonable? Let's say the Quran accepted it, but the hadith is describing something very bizarre regarding Rasulullah. So there's that logical aql aspect as well. The aqli examination also is something that we take into consideration. The Quran examines it. The other sahih ahadith, which are mutawatir, that are plentiful, examine it. Then you use your logic. Does this even make sense to you? You use that. At the end, the khabar al-wahid can become a hujjah for you. Can become something you should accept at that moment if you realize after this entire criteria, this makes sense to you. But if we have a work that has ahadith that are found in plentiful multitudes, and we find ahadith that are narrated by single individuals, singular ahadith, that are distinct, that work, we cannot call it sahih because we accept that there is a chance someone misheard something. Someone misheard. We're not going to say they were malicious or malign, their intentions were bad. They could mishear. If you accept that that is a possibility, you can't call something sahih. That is our second issue with regards to these two works here. The second, brothers and sisters, or the third rather, is the censorship that is found. And this is quite unfortunate because there are other works by scholarship from the other school of thought that don't censor some ahadith that are too difficult to swallow for some. But we find censorship particularly from Bukhari's Sahih. You find, for example, in Sahih Muslim and other works of canonized text by the other school of thought, in the event known as Raziyyat Yawm al-Khamis, the calamity of Thursday, when the Holy Prophet was passing away, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, ala hubbihi, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. That's the bab. Inshallah. On that calamity of Thursday, the Sahaba approached the Holy Prophet of Islam. What had happened was the second Khalifa, Umar ibn al-Khattab, used a very terrible statement addressing the Holy Prophet. And this is found in Sahih Muslim and others, stating, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَهْجُرُ, that the man is delirious. Sahih Bukhari, who precedes Muslim, who is Muslim's teacher, Bukhari mentions the following statement, that Umar ibn al-Khattab said that إِنَّ النَّبِيَّ قَدْ غَلَبَهُ الْوَجَعُ, قَدْ غَلَبَهُ الْوَجَعُ, that the pain has overtaken the Holy Prophet. But Muslim and others say that he said something totally different. Why? Because it'll definitely make Umar ibn al-Khattab look terrible if you say what he actually said. So you critique and you censor a little bit of what happened. Censorship is found in Bukhari, but I want the reality. I don't care if that means at the price of the reputation of certain individuals. That is why Muslim, who is his student technically, studied under Bukhari, doesn't narrate a single hadith from his teacher. He does not say in his work, Sahih Muslim, that I heard from my teacher, Muhammad bin Ismail, who heard from, etc., and goes back to Rasulullah. He skips him. Potentially, and who knows, potentially due to the censorship aspect. Because where he covered Bukhari, Muslim decided to reveal that, la, you cannot hide the reality. For example, in the event where Al-Abbas and Amir al-Mu'mineen approach the first, or rather the second Khalifa, Umar ibn al-Khattab again, and they tell him, listen, Rasulullah left behind inheritance. We want it now. The first Khalifa didn't give it to us. Give it back to us right now. Umar ibn al-Khattab, the hadith is both found in Muslim and Bukhari. And Sahih Muslim says to them, You went to Abu Bakr and you demanded the inheritance from Rasulullah, and you saw him. فَرَأَيْتُمَاهُ كَاذِبًا آثِمًا غَادِرًا خَائِنًا لِلْحَقِّ. You went to him and you saw him with these features. You saw him a liar. Ali ibn Abi Talib and Al-Abbas in Sahih Muslim narrates by Umar ibn al-Khattab that you approached Abu Bakr first for inheritance, while you saw him a liar, kha'in, a cheater, ghadir, a betrayer, someone who swayed away from the haqq. And now you are approaching me and you see me. فَرَأَيْتُمَانِي, you came to me, جِئْتُمَانِي, and you also see me, كَاذِبًا آثِمًا خَائِنًا غَادِرًا لِلْحَقِّ. Bukhari, with the same exact chain of narrators, the same hadith, gets to this part. فَرَأَيْتُمَاهُ كَذَا وَكَذَا. You came to Abu Bakr and you saw him كَذَا وَكَذَا. Then you come to me and you see me كَذَا وَكَذَا. This and that. Did Rasulullah ever use these words, كَذَا وَكَذَا? This and that? Or what, would anyone use that kind of language? You came and you saw him like this and that. Does that even make sense? Why in the first material, the first manuscript, Sahih al-Bukhari, you find this language, kada wa kada. But when later Muslim comes to examine and add this hadith, the chain is sahih according to him, but the hadith was critiqued by Bukhari. He's like, I can't add something he critiqued. I have to present the actual hadith. Ali ibn Abi Talib and Al-Abbas viewed Abu Bakr and Umar as كاذبا آثما غادرا خائنا للحق. It's a hadith that is found in Sahih Muslim. What do you want me to say? I'm not going to hide it. Bukhari hid it. كذا وكذا. But we can't hide that. Bukhari hid the following tradition, that in the day of calamity of Thursday, as we mentioned, the statements were used that the man was delirious. He had to hide that, stating that no, the Prophet has been overtaken by the pain. The censorship that is found, brothers and sisters, leads us to also refuting and rejecting that the following canonized texts, this manuscript, cannot be something you can rationally and reasonably call sahih. Fourthly, brothers and sisters, the individuals, as we mentioned in the beginning, were contemporaries to whom, if you were paying attention? Al-Imaman, Al-Jalilan, Al-Hassan Al-Askari, Wal-Hadi, alayhum as-salatu was-salam. Not one hadith from them. You lived during their time. Are they not imams? Are they not scholars? They're not necessarily imams that are ma'soom in your eyes. Okay, fine. They're not hujajullah ala al-ibad. That's fine. But are they not scholars? Everyone agrees they're ulama of the highest caliber. Not one hadith from Imam Al-Askari wal-Hadi. You lived alongside them. Furthermore, not one hadith sahih from Imam Al-Jawad. Not one hadith sahih from Imam Al-Rida. Not one hadith sahih from Imam Musa Al-Kadhim. Not one hadith sahih from Sadiq al-Muhammad. Adri Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam, was he not a scholar? Some say that no, Al-Imam Al-Sadiq was a faqih. You remember the distinction, brothers and sisters? He was a faqih. And Bukhari only narrated from muhaddithun. And so, As-Sadiq wasn't a muhaddith. He was a scholar, he gave fatawa. Therefore, that's why he ignored him. Adri, Imam As-Sadiq does not have a single hadith going back to Rasulullah. This issue is a sad issue, because when you use that logic, he wasn't a muhaddith, he was a faqih. Then let's look at some of the muhaddithun he narrates from in his Sahih. Imran bin Hattan is a narrator found in Sahih al-Bukhari. Imran bin Hattan is a faqih, rather muhaddith, and Imam al-Sadiq is not. Who is Imran bin Hattan? Imran bin Hattan was a khariji, and he wrote poetry about the dharba of Ibn Muljim on the head of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And he says, Ya dharbatin min taqiyyin ma arada biha illa liyablugha min dhil arshi ridwana. He says that, oh, what a strike it was from a taqi, a muttaqi, a mu'min, a believer. He didn't want anything from the strike on the head of Ali except to attain from dhil arshi ridwana, satisfaction and an abode near Allah, praising the strike of Ibn Muljim on the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This person is considered reliable, but Sadiq al-Muhammad is not considered reliable? La hawla la quwwata illa billah. Imran bin Hattan, a khariji. You read the traditions, hates Ali ibn Abi Talib, reliable. How is this person included? But the one that is known as the most truthful from the Muslimin and the Muslimat is not included in the transmission of ahadith. But it doesn't stop there, unfortunately. Not one hadith from Imam al-Baqir. The first Imam from the Imams of Ahlulbayt that he narrates from is Imam Zainul Abidin, although he also skips Imam al-Hassan. Not one hadith from Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Did he not see the Prophet? Was he not there with the Prophet? Did he not narrate? At least he was 7 years with the Holy Prophet of Islam. The first Imam he narrates from is from Imam Zain al-Abidin. Alhamdulillah, finally. Hadith from the Imam. Yeah, but look, what kind of hadith did he narrate? 2 ahadith from Imam Zain al-Abidin. The first is Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, were sleeping while it was Salat al-Fajr time. Rasulullah came to wake them up and Ali ibn Abi Talib began arguing with him. Why did you wake me up? I was asleep. Rasulullah said, but it's time for Salah. He says, but Salah is not wajib for the person that was sleeping. Apparently, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, in that worldview, could not find a better hadith to narrate about his grandmother Fatima and his grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib, except that they did not bother to wake up for Salat al-Fajr. And when they were woken up by Rasulullah, Imam Ali complained, why did you wake me up? This is a hadith you narrate? The second hadith from Imam Zain al-Abidin he includes in his Sahih is that Hamza, Sayyidu Shuhada'i, Hamza, Salamullahi alayh, when he migrated to Medina with Rasulullah, he began drinking alcohol so much, he was so drunk, he saw a camel and he went and he slit the belly of the camel open. The camel belonged to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Ali became very angry at the behavior, and he went and he complained to Rasulullah. This is in Sahih al-Bukhari. And Rasulullah was also confused why Hamza did this. So they both approached Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib. This is the amazing Hamza we all love and we all commemorate during Ramadan and others. We see, or during the event of Badr rather, Uhud, we see that Rasulullah approached Hamza and he says, why did you do this? Hamza said, listen, you two are my slaves, so don't bother me. Because he was really intoxicated. This is a hadith Imam Zain al-Abidin would narrate. Sayyidu Sajidin, Zainul Abidin has no other hadith to narrate. Granted, by the way, these ahadith are false to the highest degree, but this is the only hadith you narrate from the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Skips Imam al-Hassan, doesn't even bother narrating ahadith, and a couple ahadith from Imam al-Hussein, roughly 20 odd ahadith from Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, 1 hadith from Fatima al-Zahra, and that's it. The rest are not important to me. This leads us to thinking that there's an issue here. Why do you skip the Ahlul Bayt? What did they do to you? And when you decide to narrate from them, they are the most bizarre of ahadith. This also, but you had it perfectly fine, narrating it from Nawasib and Khawarij. But from the most pure, from the purest line, it was a bit difficult to narrate from, because they apparently were scholars and not narrators. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in our works has over tens of thousands of ahadith. Salamullahi alayhi, he is given his right. When he narrates something, you stay quiet and you accept what he says, sam'an wa ta'an. Because he is Sadiq al-Muhammad, not just to the Shia, to the Bani al-Bashar, to everyone. Everyone revered and respected him. To the point where you find the Sunni scholarships of the like such as Abu Hanif al-Nu'mani, with the famous phrase, لَوْلَا السَّنَتَانِ لَهَلَكَ النُّعْمَانِ. Had it not been for the 2 years, me, Nu'man bin Thabit, spent under Sadiq al-Muhammad, I would have perished. But not a single hadith worthy to narrate from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. What's going on over here? With these reasons, brothers and sisters, this leads us to the rejection of such manuscripts. Lastly, the final reason here is because some of the content is rather bizarre. Yes, we might have bizarre content in our works, but thank God, everything is subject to an analysis, analyses, examination. We can reject ahadith even if the chain is sahih because they contradict the Quran. This is a study. Why do we have 14 centuries of scholarship? Not just for no odd reason. There are bizarre traditions out there, but because they are found in these two as-sahihain, you can't but have to accept them. For example, the hadith of if a fly lands in your food, you can eat it with the food, because on one wing there is an illness, but on the other there is a medicine, dawa, and the medicine will always beat the illness. There was a doctor, I remember, in Colorado who became a Muslim, then he left Islam because he read this hadith. He's like, look, I know for sure that in the wing of a fly there are at least hundreds of diseases. What kind of logic is this? and he left Islam. This is an individual we personally knew. Thirdly, or secondly, you might find a tradition that describes Allah having or attributing anthropomorphistic qualities. Anthropomorphism, meaning Allah having limbs. There is the tradition, famous hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, where you see Nar Jahannam, hellfire, saying, Hal min mazid, is there any more to fill me up with? Yani hellfire had so many people inside it, but it had room to burn people. So it announces on the Day of Judgment, Hal min mazid, is there anyone else to come and fill me up? Then the hadith says, in Sahih al-Bukhari, فَيَضَعَ الرَّحْمَنُ قَدَمَهُ فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ, that Allah will place his foot in hellfire, and hellfire will say, Quf, quf, I'm full now, I am full. Adri, this contradicts the Quran when it says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is nothing that is like him. If you say Allah has a leg, who has a leg? Human beings have legs, animals have legs. Now we are like him. But the Quran says there is nothing like him. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. But the hadith is sahih. I don't care if the hadith contradicts the Quran. Which one do you want to prioritize? The hadith or the Quran? One tradition that might describe anthropomorphistic qualities to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we reject this to the highest degree. Anthropomorphism does not exist in the worldview of the school of Ahlulbayt, brothers and sisters. Even if you find a hadith, the odd tradition here and there, you present it to the Quran, you present it to the other traditions, and you lose your logic. Does this even make sense? You reject it. The other hadith might say something like this, that a monkey, and I don't want anyone laughing, but a she monkey committed adultery when it was already in a committed, mashallah, relationship with another monkey. It committed adultery, and so the monkeys of the community found out that this monkey committed zina. So they all picked up stones and they stoned the she monkey for committing zina. Some ahadith, you're thinking, were these from the paganistic folklore that somehow crept inside? Monkey committing adultery, the other community becoming angry, picking stones up. This is below Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah is above this. Rasulullah is greater than this. But you know who takes the blunt end of these ridiculous ahadith? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not the narrators. The narrators are chilling. They're having a wonderful time. They can say whatever they want, because who is to blame, them or Rasulullah? Well, of course, when you're inside a work that is called Sahih, along tantamount to the Holy Quran, then of course Rasulullah becomes the blame behind such ahadith. In today's age, Rasulullah is to blame for many of these weird, bizarre, disgusting at times traditions that non-Muslims always say that your Prophet said the following. Wallah, he did not. I beg you, he did not say such a tradition. There is a whole study of scholarship. Then why do 3/4 of the Muslim world accept this? There is no consensus. But people sometimes, لِتُنْظِرُوا قَوْمًا مَا أُنْظِرَ آبَاؤُهُمْ فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ. You're trying to guide a group of people. If their forefathers were like this, then it's a very difficult message, a very difficult mission to try to portray to the other side. Another tradition, for example, might speak of the Holy Prophet of Islam being bewitched. Suhiran Nabi, that the Holy Prophet of Islam was subject to sihr, magic, that the Jews, I believe Banu Qaynuqa or Banu Nadir rather, they bewitched Rasulullah in Medina. He had sihr on him. What was the result of the sihr, this magic, this black magic? Rasulullah would think he had done something, but in reality he didn't do it. So for example, Rasulullah would think that he prayed, but he actually never did. The Jews put magic on him, and Rasulullah began thinking he did something when he never did it. And you know how long the tradition in Musnad Ahmad bin Hanbal says Rasulullah was bewitched for, according to these traditions? 6 months. 6 months, my Prophet is under the spell of a random Jewish community in Medina, making him think he did something, but when in reality he never did it. Is this not a problem theologically to you? Hey, just for 1 second think, what if Rasulullah told me a hukum shar'i? How do I know that that was genuine then? What if that was the result of the sihr from Banu Qurayza, Banu Qaynuqa, Banu Nadir? 6 months, right now today, if the Imam of the Masjid was sick, just sick, ill, the whole community would hear about it. The Maulana is sick, he's not going to be able to come to Salah. Or if he's thinking he's doing something but he actually never did it, then he can come and say, I led Salah Jama'ah, and the community members will be like, no you didn't show up that day. 6 months, no one observed that Rasulullah was bewitched, no one noticed. Amir al-Mu'mineen, like this, stuck to Rasulullah, never leaving him. He never said anything. He never noticed Rasulullah was a bit weird, bewitched by the Jews, until finally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, wake up, you're under the spell. And so Allah lifted the spell from Rasulullah, according to Sahih Bukhari here. And he told him, Ya Rasulullah, your magic is inside that well. Because what they would do is they would take like little icons, and they would take little stones, and they would write stuff in it. And through this, they would use black magic. And so they would hide it somewhere. So long as these icons and stones were together, it was always active. So Rasulullah, go to that well, remove the sihr, then you will stay fine. Rasulullah went to the well, he saw the sihr, but he said, you know what, because you already lifted it from me, Ya Allah, I'm just going to leave it here. And he went on his merry way. Adri, when people like Salman Rushdie write books like Satanic Verses, he's actually citing many of these works. If you read the end of the work, he cites Sa'id bin Jubair, the narrators of these ahadith from Bukhari and Muslim, he cites them. So why the uproar? This is found in your material. For these reasons, brothers and sisters, we humbly reject such traditions and such manuscripts from ever being called Sahih ever in our lives. And we have traditions that might be complicated. We have traditions that might come across as bizarre. We have traditions that might come across as akhbar ahad. But we also have a science of diraya, of riwayah, of extrapolating, of examining, of analyzing, of rejecting, of accepting. You can't just slap the title Sahih on a book and say this is just like the Holy Quran. And anyone who dares to question anything inside has questioned the Sunnah of Rasulullah. Why did the Sunnah of Rasulullah become confined to these two works? The Sunnah of the Holy Prophet of Islam cannot be found anywhere. Not through Malik bin Anas, not through Ahmad bin Hanbal, not through Abu Hanifa, not through Imam al-Shafi'i, but through only Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Because they are Ahlulbayt what? Nubuwah. They are the Ahlulbayt of the prophethood. وَمَوْضِعُ الرِّسَالَةِ. And they are the center of where the Risala of Allah lands. It's in their house, Nazalat al-Ayat. It's in their house, Hadith al-Kisa happened. It's in their house, the verses of the Holy Quran were revealed. It's in their home. Who better knows the Sunnah of Rasulullah other than the family of Rasulullah salamullahi alayhi? That's where the famous poem and the sha'ar comes and says, إن كنت إذا شئت أن تبغي لنفسك مذهبا ينجيك يوم البعث من لهب النار فدع عنك قول الشافعي ومالك وأحمد المروي عن كعب الأحبار ووالي أناس نقلهم وحديثهم روى جدنا عن جبريل عن الباري. If you want to find a source, a madhab that will take you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then stay away from the words of Ahmad and Malik and Shafi'i and associate with those who do not narrate from the likes of Ka'b al-Ahbar and these individuals, but rather their chain of hadith goes as such. I heard from my grandfather Rasulullah, who heard from Jibreel, who heard from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you want a better hadith or a hadith chain than this? There is no such thing. And this can only be found none other with Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt al-Mayamin al-Ma'sumin. Scholarship, brothers and sisters, has always been a difficult concept to grasp. There are scholars here and there. But the greatest of scholars, brothers and sisters, were those who understood the haqq, took it, held on to it, and died with it. Scholars, brothers and sisters, come in many shapes and sizes, come in many ages. Don't be surprised if a scholar is 9 years old. And don't be surprised if the alim has crossed his 100. Allah's Risala can be found with those who have found the nur of the Ahlul Bayt. And as the Ahlul Bayt have said, ilm, knowledge, is a nur, a light that enters the heart. If you truly want that light, open your heart. And there have been no other scholars, brothers and sisters, that have opened their hearts to the Ahlul Bayt especially Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, like two ulama, two scholars, two huffaz al-Quran, memorizers of the Holy Quran, two narrators of a hadith. These scholars are known as number one, Muslim bin Awsaja. Number two, Habib bin Mudahar. These were ulama. These were scholars. They grew up with the Ahlulbayt. They were Sahaba. They met Rasulullah. They heard Rasulullah. They stuck with Rasulullah. And they were companions of his family. Abi Abdullah al-Hussein salamullahi alayh and Muslim bin Awsaja and Habib bin Mudahar grew up together. Even though Habib and Muslim were older than Imam al-Hussein salamullahi alayh, but they know who their Imam is, so they stuck with him while he was a young boy alayhi salam. And Muslim bin Awsaja and Habib bin Mudahar, they're relatives from a distance, because Muslim bin Awsaja al-Asadi, Habib bin Mudahar al-Asadi, they're from Banu Asad, they're related distantly, they're cousins. They grew together. They were scholars, they've memorized the Holy Quran, and they knew when the tough came, the moment came to become tough, they really pushed through thick and thin, serving the Imam of their time. You had first Muslim bin Awsaja. His stance, brothers and sisters, on the day of Karbala is something truly remarkable. He left Kufa while Ibn Ziyad had blocked Kufa from entry and exit. He managed to leave. He left. Mind you, Muslim bin Awsaja, ahadith describe him as extremely old, to the point where his eyebrows came over his eyes from the wrinkle, such that he had to take a band and strap and wrap it around his forehead like this to hold up the hair and hold up his face together from his old age. But despite that, a young heart. He left Kufa, Muslim bin Awsaja, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayh, and he joined Abi Abdullah. He heard he was coming. He joined Sayyid al-Shuhada. When he joined him, he was there with the other companions of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. He overheard a discussion had between Lady Zainab and Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. The discussion goes as the following. Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam said to Abi Abdullah, do you trust your companions, your sahaba, your ashab? Do you think they're really loyal to you? Abi Abdullah said, Inshallah they are. Muslim bin Awsaja heard this and his heart broke. How could Lady Zainab alayhi salam think for a moment that we are not loyal to our Imam? He decided to gather the other Sahaba that were nearby, and they came to the tent of Abu Abdullah and Sayyida Zainab. And they went and they made an announcement loudly. They said, oh, our beloved masters, if we were to die, burn, and become ashes, and have that happen 1,000 times, we would never leave you. Muslim bin Awsaja has a beautiful stance in the day of Karbala, brothers and sisters, and he fought valiantly. His best friend, however, was still not around, Habib bin Mudahar. He was still in Kufa. Again, scholar, alim, faqih, narrator of hadith, sahabi of Rasulullah, valiant warrior. Muslim bin Awsaja was very strong, and he was a strong warrior. He was fighting in the expansion of Azerbaijan. During the expansion of Azerbaijan, he was there, dispatched by Salman al-Muhammadi, and he was there in opening and spreading Islam. So he was a strong warrior. Habib bin Mudahar likewise was a strong warrior. Habib, however, was a bit late because, as we said, bin Ziyad had closed Kufa. It's too difficult to get out. But guess what? Where there's a will, there's a way. If you really want, you can go. There are those who made that excuse. I know Hussein is coming. I really do. But bin Ziyad closed the door. Khalas, he'll understand. Okay, inshallah, that'll help you on the Day of Judgment. Habib bin Mudahar, his wife told him, they were sitting down together like this. They were looking at each other. They were enjoying a meal. His wife said to him, looking at him, when are you going to go? When are you going to go? Are you going to leave the son of Fatima by himself? When do you leave? Habib said, I'm going to go right now. As he got up, he looked at his son. Habib bin Mudahar has a son by the name of Qasim bin Habib. Qasim looked at him, bid him farewell. Young boy. As he was going, his wife looked at him and said, but wait, when you see Hussein, tell him we love him. Tell him we really love him. Send him our salams. Habib said, Inshallah. Abu Abdullah was already eagerly waiting for Habib bin Mudahir. In fact, he wrote him a letter, and the letter is a beautiful letter. He writes, from one Habib to the next Habib, come and join me. He got that letter and he left. When Habib bin Mudahir left Kufa, Abu Abdullah heard someone was coming from a distance. They told him, Sayyid al-Shuhada stood up, alayhi salam, went out and he looked, and he said the following beautiful line, 2 words, Kun Habib, please be Habib. Why? Because he knows Habib bin Mudahir was with Rasulullah. He knows Habib bin Mudahir never abandoned Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was always with them. They grew up together. Imagine seeing your long lost friend almost, and you know where their heart is. Their heart is with you. And he said, I wish it's Habib. Suddenly, Habib bin Mudahir approaches. Abu Abdullah embraces him. Abu Abdullah was so happy to see him. The following moment is really powerful, brothers and sisters. He said to him something we wish one day we can hear. He says, oh Habib, we're so happy to see you. Sayyida Zainab wants to say salam to you. And Habib said, my honor. What an honor it is that Lady Zainab alayhi salam says, I would love to say salam to me. What a pleasure. Of course, allow me that honor. And he goes to the tent and he sends his salams to Lady Zainab. But he knew the night was going to be a difficult night. And that night, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam lit fire around the tents at night so that no one would come and harass them, because the next day would be the day of the battle. Shimr bin Dhul Jawshan la'natullah alayh came and he said to him, O Hussein, you're preparing for the fire of hell from now? Muslim bin Awsaja and Habib bin Mudahir heard this. They said, Master, let me at him right now. Let me go. Let me finish him. Abu Abdullah said to him, Oh, my beloved Sahaba, we do not begin wars. We do not begin the battle. We end them. We do not begin them. Be patient. No surprise, Sayyid al-Shuhada later said the famous line, Ma ra'aytu wallah, ma ra'aytu ashaban awfa wa khayran min ashabi. I have not seen companions more loyal than my companions. I lit a lantern, a light at night, telling them, if you want to leave, go, because they're here to kill me, not you. I opened the light and no one left. Loyalty. Spearheaded by Muslim bin Awsaja and Habib bin Mudahir, these 2 ulama, these 2 scholars of the highest degree. Until the day came when it was time to fight. Muslim bin Awsaja was one of the first. Alim, scholar, shaybah, elderly man, but he fought like a champion on that field. And he fought valiantly. Traditions say he removed 60, up to 90 of these mushrikeen and these kuffar, killed them, until one man who does not fear Allah lunged that spear and sword on Muslim bin Awsaja's back and another one on his blessed head, until he fell to the ground saying the line, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. When Muslim bin Awsaja fell to the ground, you had Abi Abdullah alayhi salam make his way to Muslim bin Awsaja, and he came to him, but alongside him was Habib bin Mudahir. When they came to Muslim bin Awsaja, Muslim looked at Habib, Habib looked at Muslim. Habib said to Muslim, Oh Muslim, my beloved friend, if I was not going to die moments after you, I would have asked you to tell me what is your will, for you did not leave one behind you. Muslim bin Awsaja looked at Habib and said, Oh my beloved friend, I will tell you my will right now. And he points at Imam al-Hussein and he says the line that really breaks the heart. He says, Uslika bihadha أوصيك بهذا الغريب أوصيك بهذا الغريب غريب الغاضرية. I ask you to watch after this gharib, the stranger of Karbala. Take care of him and watch him. Soon after it was time for him to go. Habib bin Mudahar rushes and fights the enemies of Allah. Habib bin Mudahar valiantly slashes through their lines until one man who doesn't fear Allah lunged a sword right on the head of Habib bin Mudahar until he fell down and called out with his loudest voice, As-salamu alayk, Ya Aba Abdullah. Aba Abdullah al-Hussein ran to Habib bin Mudahar. Today if you go to Karbala, you will find the dharih of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and right next to it you see the dharih of Habib by himself. He deserves that distinction. Later on, when they were taken to Kufa, there was a young boy following the captives. This young boy was Qasim, the son of Habib, and he was following one man who was holding a particular head, and he followed, and that man asked him, young boy, why are you following me? He said to him, I want to see where's the head of my father Habib. My mother told me go and see if he gave his life to Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. فرج عنا يا الله. اللهم شافي مرضانا بحق مريض كربلاء. عافيهم يا الله. فرج عنا يا الله. Oh Allah, we ask you to grant us the ziyarah of Abi Abdullah in this dunya, and to grant us the shafa'ah of Sayyid al-Shuhada in the akhirah. Oh Allah, we ask you to heal all those who are sick on behalf of the sick one of Karbala, Zainul Abidin. Oh Allah, we ask you to never separate from us the love of Abi Abdullah, طرفة عين أبدا في الدنيا والآخرة. And we ask you, Ya Allah, to grant us the honor of going this year, Ya Rabbil Alameen, to visit Sayyid al-Shuhada and hold his blessed dharih and his brother Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you, وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والعلماء والشهداء سيما من أوصانا بالدعاء رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد. Brothers and sisters, let us also recite the ayat of Amma Yujibul Muftar 5 times. Recently there were many atrocities that happened in Afghanistan with droughts and killings, unfortunately, and our family and friends are all affected over there. Let us recite the ayat Amma Yujibul Muftar, for that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings some ease and peace to those individuals affected. All together, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَا وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. All together, أَمَّن يُجِيبُ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. اللهم اكشف السوء والبلاء عنا يا الله. اللهم المرضى المنظورين شافي وعافهم، خصوصا في بلاد أفغانستان يا الله. اللهم شافي وعافهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.